The memory of the day John Walker invited me to meet his daughter lingers vividly in my mind. The office buzzed with the usual Monday morning energy, as colleagues rushed to meet deadlines, respond to emails, and manage their myriad tasks. As I stepped into John's office, an unmistakable shift in the atmosphere enveloped me. John prefers to skip the pleasantries and get straight to the point. He focuses on the task at hand, and when he seeks your attention, it typically signifies something significant. Lucas began, his voice unwavering and composed as ever. I would like you to meet someone. I found myself standing there, enveloped in confusion. Whom might I encounter? The individuals I typically engage with are clients or fellow team members. However, this? It fell off. He rose to his feet and motioned toward the door, then guided me along the hallway to a conference room. At the table sat a young woman, likely in her early 20s, appearing somewhat incongruous in the otherwise corporate setting. Her dark hair was neatly pulled back into a ponytail, and she carried a calm, almost reserved presence. It was evident that she was not accustomed to the formality of the environment. This is my daughter, Claire, John said, his voice brimming with pride. She's beginning her journey here as an intern, and I'd like you to guide her, Lucas. I have greater confidence in you than in anyone else here. Please guide her, assist her in becoming familiar with the tasks, and help her blend into the team. I have faith in you. I nodded, attempting to mask the astonishment that coursed through me. I was aware of John's reputation for his strictness, and his expectations were perpetually elevated. However, this seemed like a significant obligation. The tension was beginning to mount, despite my efforts to remain composed. Claire offered me a courteous smile. It was a pleasure to meet you, she murmured, her tone tinged with uncertainty. It was a pleasure to meet you as well, I responded, making an effort to maintain my composure. I had so much more to express, yet I found myself unexpectedly taken aback. John hardly allowed us a moment to converse. He offered a brief, parting word of motivation before departing, leaving us to embark on the day ahead. Once the door clicked shut behind him, Claire faced me, her eyes reflecting a sense of uncertainty. So, she remarked, looking down at her notepad, what precisely should I be aware of regarding this location? It was evident she was making an effort to ease the tension, yet it was just as apparent that she felt as uncomfortable as I did. Being the boss's daughter carries a unique weight. It feels as though there's an unspoken demand for perfection, or at the very least, an expectation that you should have everything figured out. I found myself feeling a twinge of sympathy for her. I settled into the chair opposite her, aiming to ease her discomfort. First and foremost, it's essential to understand that we put in a lot of effort here. John maintains lofty standards, and the expectations surrounding him soar even higher. You've got an incredible mentor, I remarked, aiming to offer her some comfort. I'll assist you in getting comfortable here. There's no need to fret, you'll soon find your rhythm. She nodded, her expression softening slightly. Yet, I sensed she was still in the process of discovering what her true purpose was in this situation. Honestly, I had my doubts as well. As the morning unfolded, we immersed ourselves in the tasks at hand, elucidating the fundamentals, reviewing several pivotal projects, and guiding her through the company's layout. Yet, an unsettling sensation lingered, hinting at the presence of something simmering just below the surface. I found myself uncertain whether it was the influence of John or simply the reality that Claire was the boss's daughter. Yet, I couldn't shake the sensation that every move I made in her presence was under scrutiny. The atmosphere was charged, extending beyond the mere responsibilities of the role. An unvoiced tension lingered in the air between us. Something understated, yet undeniably present. Each time our hands grazed or our gazes intertwined, it seemed as though there was something deeper than the typical mentor-mentee relationship. Yet, I set that notion aside. I didn't come here to entangle myself with the boss's daughter. I came here to fulfill a task. Yet, beneath the surface, I understood that this would be far more complex than merely guiding her through the basics. The subsequent days flew by in a blur. Having Claire follow me around the office felt somewhat unusual. She was present in meetings, watching my every move. In my experience with interns, they often seem to linger without much engagement. However, Claire, there was a subtle yet powerful energy that surrounded her. She was observing intently. She was fully engaged, posing insightful questions, and diligently jotting down notes. She appeared enthusiastic about gaining knowledge, yet she was mindful not to overstep any boundaries. Initially, I believed it might feel uncomfortable having her nearby. I'm accustomed to solitude, charting my own course, and managing everything in my own style. Yet, with Claire involved, the atmosphere shifted entirely. I discovered that I was articulating my thoughts with greater precision, ensuring that no detail went overlooked. I began to observe the extent of her absorption and the speed at which she was grasping new concepts. We would share a meal, often engaging in conversation about work, exchanging light-hearted anecdotes from the workplace. She would chuckle at the inside jokes I shared with the team, yet there remained an undeniable distance between us. It was clear to me that she was restraining herself. Perhaps she was merely adhering to a sense of professionalism, or it could have been the weight of expectations that came with being John Walker's daughter in an environment where everyone anticipated greatness from her. One afternoon, as we relaxed in the break room, she faced me with an earnest expression. "Lucas, do you believe I have what it takes for this?" She inquired, as though reluctant to acknowledge it within herself. Her inquiry took me by surprise. I had been so absorbed in the task at hand, in helping her catch up, that I hadn't truly considered her feelings. It became evident that she was grappling with the burden of her father's expectations and the strain of meeting them. "Truly, I believe you are managing quite well," I responded, aiming to convey a sense of support. "Feeling uncertain at the beginning of a new journey is completely natural, yet your mindset is spot on. Your presence here goes beyond simply being John's daughter. Your presence signifies that you possess something valuable to share. Allow it to unfold naturally. Your flow will come to you." She smiled, yet the warmth didn't touch her eyes. "I hope so," she murmured, gazing out the window, her expression distant and contemplative. I found myself feeling a twinge of sympathy for her. She found herself in a challenging situation, and it was clear she was striving to demonstrate her worth. The immense expectations placed upon her by her father were palpable, and I could already sense the burden beginning to take its toll on her. The following day, John came over to my desk. The meeting was short, merely to touch base on Claire's progress. I provided him with the usual update. She was progressing nicely, posing insightful questions, and beginning to blend in with the team. But I couldn't shake the feeling that John was watching me, maybe more closely than I was comfortable with. The significance extended beyond the task at hand. It transcended mere surface matters. John's gaze lingered on me, his face a mask of inscrutability. "I'm pleased to know that," he remarked with a calm tone. "Just remember, Lucas, I trust you. It's essential for Claire to thrive in this environment. I trust you will assist her in discovering her role within this organization." I nodded, hoping not to be let down. Yet, within me, a wave of anxiety surged. This had evolved into something beyond mere guidance. John placed his faith in me regarding his daughter's future, and I understood the weight of that responsibility. If things went awry, if Claire stumbled, the repercussions would extend beyond her alone. The responsibility would rest with me. With each passing day, the atmosphere between us grew increasingly charged. Claire and I shared these fleeting instances when our gazes would meet, and I experienced an inexplicable tug, a bond that eluded my understanding. Yet, I continued to set it aside. I had to maintain my focus. I had a task to complete. One evening, after a long day spent crafting a presentation, Claire lingered in the office to wrap up her tasks. I suggested walking her out, but she firmly stated she was fine. Just as I was preparing to exit the office, I noticed her at her desk, fixated on her computer screen. There was an essence to her, a quality that suggested she was more than merely a girl attempting to navigate her father's realm. She was an individual on a quest to discover her unique journey, her true self. Before departing, I made a brief visit to her desk. Text I attempted to shatter the stillness, you know. If you ever require assistance with anything, feel free to reach out. I'm here to support you as you navigate this situation. Claire raised her gaze to meet mine, and for an instant, our eyes were intertwined. At first, she remained silent, yet her gaze held a depth that suggested she might perceive me as something beyond a mere guide. I swiftly averted my gaze, reluctant to delve too deeply into the implications. Thank you, Lucas, she finally murmured, her voice gentle. Thank you very much. As I stepped out of the office, the drive home was filled with a nagging sense that the dynamics between us were shifting into a more intricate territory. Claire had transcended her identity as merely John Walker's daughter. She was transforming into a presence I found impossible to overlook, and that realization unsettled me. I had to keep my emotions in check, my professional future depended on it. As time went on, the distinctions between professionalism and something more began to fade. It wasn't an event I had orchestrated, yet it seemed destined to unfold. Claire exhibited intelligence and competence, steadily increasing her participation in the company's initiatives. We would dedicate additional hours to collaborate, staying late to refine reports or engage in strategic discussions. It was all purely professional, naturally, yet an unvoiced tension lingered in the atmosphere. I observed it in the course of our discussions. She would lock eyes with me from across the conference table, and in that fleeting instant, my concentration would waver. Her gaze possessed an uncanny ability to render everything else insignificant. We experienced the same situation while strolling through the office or chatting near the coffee machine. It wasn't anything blatant, just these subtle, ephemeral instances, but they existed, and I couldn't overlook them. One afternoon, John summoned me to his office once more. As usual, he got straight to the point. How is Claire faring? He inquired, his tone steady yet resolute. She's doing wonderfully, I remarked, seamlessly continuing the conversation. She's picking things up rapidly, posing insightful questions and growing more at ease with the group. I'm confident that she'll soon be prepared to embrace additional responsibilities. John nodded, a satisfied expression on his face. Excellent. Continue to encourage her. I want her completely immersed in the company, and I need her to grasp that the work here is challenging. I'm trusting you to help her navigate all of this. I agreed, of course, but deep down, there was something in his tone that made me uneasy. It felt as though he was observing me intently, as if anticipating an event to unfold. I understood the necessity of maintaining my distance, yet with each day that went by, it grew increasingly difficult. That evening, as I was leaving the office, I noticed Claire at her desk, fixated on her screen once more. It was always unexpected to see her as the final person to depart. I anticipated her to be more enthusiastic about leaving the office, yet she appeared as if she was attempting to demonstrate something. For her father, for me, perhaps even for herself. Claire, I remarked as I made my way to her desk, there's no need for you to stay late every single day. Your progress is commendable. Pause for a moment. She glanced up at me, her face momentarily taken aback, but then a smile broke through. I understand. I really don't want to let him down, you understand? She spoke gently, her tone revealing a trace of fragility that was unfamiliar to me. I took a moment, weighing my words with precision. John may be a tough audience, yet he recognizes the promise you hold. You're doing great. There's no need to push yourself too hard. She nodded slowly, yet a flicker in her eyes suggested that her conviction was not fully intact. I chose not to pursue it any further. Wishing you well, Claire. Please don't linger too long. I remarked, pivoting to depart. Yet, as I turned to leave, an unsettling feeling washed over me, hinting that the situation was far more complex than it appeared. Claire stood out among the interns, determined to make her mark. She bore a heavy burden, the expectations of her father, the pressure to uphold a legacy not of her own making, and now, perhaps, the unacknowledged weight of a bond forming between us. Later that evening, after I had departed from the office, an unexpected message found its way to me. It came from Claire. I would like to have a conversation with you. Would you like to grab a coffee together? I gazed at the message, momentarily paralyzed by uncertainty. I had dedicated considerable effort to maintaining professionalism and establishing a distinct boundary between us, yet now it seemed that line was being challenged. She expressed a desire to meet, and a part of me sensed it was more than merely professional. After a moment of doubt, I decided to reply. Absolutely, I'll see you in roughly an hour. Upon my arrival at the cafe, I found Claire already seated at a corner table, her gaze darting around the room with a hint of anxiety. Upon catching sight of me, she gestured for me to come closer, her smile tinged with a hint of discomfort. I appreciate your presence, she remarked as I took my seat. This isn't a conversation I wanted to have in the office. I arched an eyebrow. What's happening? She inhaled deeply, her gaze falling to her hands, as if summoning the bravery to express something significant. I'm feeling uncertain about whether this is the right path for me. Concerning the task at hand. Due to the pressure. I feel like I'm always under a microscope, like I'm not good enough. The gravity of her words resonated deeply, infused with a striking sincerity in her tone. It was evident how challenging it was for her to acknowledge it. Claire, you're excelling. However, I understand. You're navigating a complex landscape that goes beyond simply acquiring new skills. You're striving to meet standards that are unrelated to your true abilities. Believe me, there's no need for you to demonstrate anything to anyone. Concentrate on putting forth your utmost effort. She gazed at me for an extended moment, her eyes becoming gentle. Her expression conveyed a depth that suggested she sought more than mere reassurance about her work. It felt like she was on a quest for something greater, something profound. Yet, I set that notion aside. You're right, she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Your words were exactly what I needed to hear. The discussion returned to work after that, and we delved into the upcoming projects, yet I couldn't dismiss the sense that the dynamic between us was evolving. This had evolved beyond mere guidance, it had transformed into something far more intimate. Upon exiting the cafe, a singular thought resonated within me, I must maintain my distance. If I fail to act, I risk losing it all. The days following my coffee with Claire were peculiar. A delicate transformation lingered in the atmosphere surrounding us, an alteration I found impossible to overlook. She appeared somewhat more aloof, yet there were moments when her gaze would rest on me for longer than necessary. I try not to think too much about it. I had my own obligations to manage, and Claire's challenges with her position in the company were matters I couldn't risk becoming too entangled in. Yet, there were instances that intensified the challenge of maintaining my distance. One afternoon, we found ourselves gathered in the conference room, reviewing reports in preparation for an upcoming presentation. The team concentrated intently on the task before us, yet I could sense Claire beside me, her presence nearly tangible. Whenever I shared my thoughts, I sensed her keen gaze upon me, taking in every word I uttered. Do you believe I'm prepared for this? She inquired abruptly, her tone scarcely rising above a murmur. I gazed at her in astonishment. Prepared for what? For the next step, she remarked, casting a glance at the pile of files resting on the table. You mentioned that I would be taking on more responsibilities shortly, but I'm uncertain if I'm ready for that. I observed her intently, attempting to decipher her thoughts. Her voice carried a tension, an uncertainty that had not existed previously. She had moved beyond mere inquiries about work. It felt like she was in search of something deeper, something her father was unable to provide. Text, I believe in your ability to tackle whatever challenges come your way, I said, my tone calm and supportive. There's no need to hurry. Embrace the journey, absorb knowledge at your own pace. She nodded slowly, yet I could sense the uncertainty still hovering in her gaze. Uncertainty lingered within me, a blend of self-doubt and something deeper, as I sensed that Claire was on a quest for more than mere validation in the office. The upcoming days were steeped in an even greater sense of discomfort. Claire maintained a certain distance, and our interactions were limited and formal. She continued to pose insightful questions, and her dedication was remarkable, yet an unmistakable tension had begun to develop between us. And then it unfolded. Late one night, I found myself in the office, diligently crafting a presentation that needed to be submitted by the next morning. As I moved through the dimly lit corridors, a sudden sound caught my attention, footsteps echoing behind me. It sent a chill down my spine, making me question if I truly was alone in the building. As I pivoted, I spotted Claire framed in the doorway of my office. "I didn't mean to interrupt," she said, her voice gentle yet laced with an unexpressed tension. "I wanted to reach out and see how you're doing. Your efforts have been commendable." I offered a smile, aiming to maintain a cheerful atmosphere. "Thank you, Claire. I'm wrapping up a few tasks." She remained still, however. She stood in the doorway, and an undeniable sense of reluctance hung in the air as if she were struggling to take that final step away. Her gaze held a certain intensity that stirred a sense of discomfort within me. It seemed as though she had something to express, yet the words eluded her grasp. I rose to my feet and made my way over to her. "It would be wise to take a moment for yourself and recharge. It's late." She didn't respond at first, and then, as I passed by her, she reached out and touched my arm lightly. Though it was a minor act, it reverberated within me like a jolt of electricity. Her touch was soft, yet there was an undeniable intensity in the way she lingered for just a moment too long. "I can't quite grasp what's happening to me," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lately, I found myself in a state of confusion, unsure of who I can turn to for a conversation." I glanced in her direction, my heart racing within me. The undeniable tension between us had reached a breaking point. It wasn't merely a figment of my imagination, it was tangible, and it was evident that Claire was grappling with issues that transcended her professional life. "Claire," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "you must concentrate on the task at hand." "So, that's the reason for your presence, isn't it? To demonstrate your value within the organization. I'm ready to assist you with that. However, nothing more." She withdrew her hand, her gaze falling to the ground. "I know," she whispered, her voice laced with a deep melancholy. "I simply don't want to let anyone down." I inhaled deeply, seeking to find my balance. This was the defining moment. I couldn't allow anything to cross the boundary. "Listen, Claire, you're not disappointing anyone. You're doing great, but we have to keep this professional." She nodded, yet the disappointment in her eyes was unmistakable. In silence, she pivoted and departed, leaving me rooted in place, grappling with a swirl of emotions. I returned to my desk, thoughts swirling in my head. I had just established a boundary, yet I was acutely aware that our situation remained far from settled. Claire continued her search for something elusive. There was a void in her life that neither her father nor I could fill. And no matter how much I tried to focus on the work, I couldn't shake the feeling that this situation was only going to get more complicated. The following day, the atmosphere was charged with tension. Claire kept her gaze averted from mine throughout the day, and I found myself burdened by the gravity of the situation. I made an effort to clarify the situation, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that it might not be sufficient. As the workday was drawing to a close, an email from John landed in my inbox. "Lucas, I wanted to see how Claire is adjusting. I have faith in your ability to guide her towards success. Continue the excellent efforts, but ensure that nothing hinders her advancement. I have faith in you." His words were clear, yet there was a subtle undertone that intensified the sense of pressure building within me. John observed intently, his hopes soaring high. However, I realized at that moment that it wasn't solely Claire's achievements that held significance. It was also my own standing at stake. As I shut my laptop, an unsettling sense lingered that everything was on the verge of unraveling. Claire and I had ventured into uncharted territory, regardless of our willingness to acknowledge it. The repercussions were only beginning to reveal themselves. The weight of the situation was beginning to bear down on me. Each time I encountered Claire, each time our words intertwined, an undeniable sensation lingered that something was simmering just out of sight. A matter we both wished to avoid facing. I had kept my distance as best as I could, but it wasn't enough. It was clear that Claire was holding on to the tension that had developed between us. One evening the following week, John requested that I remain after work. After a lengthy day filled with meetings and reports, my thoughts were drifting towards the drive home when the text arrived. "Lucas, I would appreciate it if you could linger for a while. I would like to talk about something significant regarding Claire." I quickly texted back, agreeing to meet. As soon as I stepped into his office, I sensed an unmistakable change in the atmosphere. John sat at his desk, immersed in thought. A visage that exudes tranquility yet conveys resolute anticipation. "Take a seat," he instructed, gesturing toward the chair opposite him. I did, making an effort to remain composed even as the discomfort began to settle in. "What's going on?" "I've been conversing with Claire," he started, his voice unwavering. "I've observed a few details. I sense that she is beginning to experience the burden of her presence here, of existing in my shadow. I'm uncertain if she possesses the skills to manage it." I gave a slight nod, making an effort to keep my reaction in check. This was already known to me. I had glimpsed it within her gaze. "I'm aware that you've been guiding her, Lucas. However, I require you to ensure that she maintains her concentration. She possesses great talent, yet she tends to lose focus quite easily. She carries a heavy burden, and my hope is for her to thrive." "I comprehend," I replied, maintaining an even tone. John halted, his gaze fixed on me, revealing a trace of unexpressed thoughts in his eyes. "I have faith that you will guide her in the right direction. However, keep in mind that she is my daughter. I prefer that nothing occurs between the two of you. I've come across some whispers, and I prefer to steer clear of that kind of turmoil in the workplace." I stood still, my heart racing. The atmosphere in the room changed, and in an instant, the gravity of John's words pressed down on me. "Rumors?" I inquired, attempting to maintain a nonchalant demeanor, yet fully aware that the strain in my voice was unmistakable. John leaned forward, his face set in a serious expression. "Don't act like you don't know, Lucas. I understand how everything operates. I see clearly. Maintain a professional demeanor. I'm entrusting you with significant responsibility, but should anything go awry, I will not hesitate to respond decisively." I nodded swiftly, attempting to stifle the surge of anxiety that was building within me. "Absolutely, John. I will maintain a professional demeanor at all times. I have consistently supported you." He shot me a piercing glance, his eyes tightening with intensity. "Excellent. If I discover that any boundaries have been crossed, I will act decisively to ensure you face the consequences as well." The gravity of his words settled heavily within me. John was more than just my superior. He was Claire's father, and he was emphasizing that any mistake could lead to dire consequences for me. I had to ensure that my personal emotions didn't get in the way of my professional responsibilities, particularly considering his position and the trust he had invested in me. After the meeting, I was more unsettled than ever. I was uncertain whether John was merely attempting to establish his dominance or if he possessed knowledge that eluded me. All I understood was that I needed to proceed with caution. The last thing I needed was for Claire to find out that her father was suspicious of what was going on between us. The next few days were a blur of work. I concentrated entirely on the tasks before me, steering clear of any superfluous engagement with Claire. I maintained a professional demeanor, yet it was evident that she was still facing challenges. It was in the manner she evaded eye contact, the way she appeared preoccupied during discussions, as if her thoughts were drifting to another place. One afternoon, as we exited a meeting, she paused me in the hallway. Her face glowed with a flush, and her expression was taut with tension. "Lucas, we need to have a conversation," she said, her tone quiet yet pressing. After a moment of uncertainty, I finally gave a nod. "Absolutely, Claire. What thoughts are swirling in your head?" She cast a swift look around, ensuring that no one was eavesdropping. She moved in closer, her voice soft and almost inaudible. "This can't go on any longer. I can no longer maintain the facade that all is well between us. It feels overwhelming." I swallowed hard, trying to hide the growing discomfort in my chest. "Claire, could you clarify what you mean?" She locked her gaze with mine, and for the first time in weeks, I caught a glimpse of the vulnerability that had been concealed beneath her polished exterior. Do you understand what I'm saying? You occupy my thoughts endlessly. I'm aware it's not right, yet I find myself unable to resist. Her words struck me with the force of a blow to the abdomen. This caught me off guard. I attempted to create some space, yet it became evident that I had misjudged the depth of her emotions. With John's warnings echoing in my thoughts, I realized this could not continue any longer. Claire, I stated, my tone resolute, even as my heart raced. This is not the appropriate setting for this. You're here to learn, to prove yourself. This must not hinder your future aspirations. Her eyes grew large, and she took a step back, a blend of bewilderment and pain evident on her face. So, you don't share the same feelings? The weight of guilt enveloped me, yet I understood this was the sole path to safeguard us both. It's not about emotions. It revolves around limits. I refuse to jeopardize everything, my career and your future, over something that simply shouldn't occur. She remained there, quiet, for an extended pause. With a heavy heart, she turned and walked away, leaving me in the hallway, thoughts swirling in my mind. I had just closed off the one thing that had been subtly developing between us. Though it pained me deeply, I understood it was the necessary course of action. Yet, a fragment of my being couldn't shake off the curiosity that lingered. Had the moment passed us by? Had I ventured beyond a point of no return? With each passing day, the response to that inquiry appeared to become more evident. The repercussions of my choices were beginning to loom over me. The days that came after that conversation were frigid, uneasy, and steeped in tension. Claire and I remained in our respective corners of the office, pretending that the awkwardness had never occurred. I focused on work, diving deeper into projects, staying late, and avoiding any unnecessary moments where we could be alone. She mirrored my actions, immersing herself in her own responsibilities, yet the fatigue in her eyes was unmistakable. I knew she was struggling to move past everything, just as I was. Yet, in spite of our efforts to maintain a sense of professionalism, an undeniable force seemed to draw us back to one another. On a Thursday evening, a dinner related to work was planned. John had extended an invitation to several key clients, and attendance from everyone in the office was anticipated. Claire had poured her heart into the presentation for the dinner, and I was there to assist her with the finishing details. As the evening unfolded, the ambience in the restaurant transformed. The clients were deep in discussion with other team members, which left Claire and me sitting together at the table, in a moment of solitude. She seemed more subdued than normal, and I couldn't ignore the way she nervously toyed with her glass, as if she had something to express, but was struggling to find the words. The familiar tension began to resurface. Our exchanges had been sparse since that chat in the hallway. It felt like we were suspended in time, each of us poised and anticipating the other's next action. At last, I could no longer endure the quiet. "Claire," I asked gently, "are you all right?" She cast a fleeting look in my direction, her eyes betraying a hint of surprise. "Yeah, just tired. This week has felt particularly lengthy." I nodded, yet there was a depth in her gaze, an unvoiced sentiment that thickened the atmosphere around us. I found myself pondering whether she had been reflecting on that moment we experienced together. I attempted to persuade myself that she had moved forward, yet each time our gazes intertwined, my certainty wavered. She gazed at her hands, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her glass, evidently summoning the bravery to voice her thoughts. "Lucas, her voice wavered, yet the expression on her face was undeniable. The distance that separated us seemed to diminish. She felt an intense need to express herself, as if the moment was slipping away and her words were crucial, before time ran out. Just as I was ready to reply, she unexpectedly leaned over the table, her hand gently landing on mine. My breath hitched in my throat. Her touch was electric, sending a jolt of warmth up my arm. I gazed at her, attempting to grasp the significance of the moment, yet time appeared to stretch endlessly. This was a point of no return. "Claire, we can't," I began, but she cut me off. Just as I was about to retract my hand, she moved closer. Her lips touched mine in a kiss that began with uncertainty, a soft connection that was tender yet brimming with profound feeling. My heart raced as the gravity of the moment enveloped me. I could feel her breath, warm and quick against my lips, and I knew she was just as caught up in it as I was. In that instant, it seemed as though the world around me faded away. The eatery, the patrons, the whole universe. Everything gradually disappeared. In that intimate moment, it was just Claire and me, enveloped in a small world where nothing else held significance but the gentle touch of her lips against mine. Yet, as swiftly as it started, the kiss came to a close. She withdrew gradually, her fingers easing from my grasp, and I noticed the fear escalating in her gaze. She appeared nearly contrite, as though she lamented the kiss, before it had even taken place. "Lucas, she began, her voice quivering. "I apologize. I'm not sure what was going through my mind. I didn't know what to say." The room swirled around me, and I sensed that I had just stepped over a threshold that was now irrevocably crossed. "Claire, this is not possible. You're aware of that." Her gaze was clouded with doubt. I couldn't stop myself. "Claire," I reiterated, my voice carrying a stronger conviction this time. "This is not feasible for us. You are the daughter of my superior. I've been guiding you, and I vowed this wouldn't occur. I can't jeopardize everything for something that is unlikely to succeed." She nodded, her eyes glistening with the weight of unshed tears. "I know. I apologize. I can't quite grasp why I believed." I rose to my feet, an overwhelming sense of confinement washing over me. "It's not on you. We must maintain our focus. This isn't the right setting for whatever this may be." The pain was evident in her gaze. The bewilderment. Yet, I found myself with no other option. I couldn't allow myself to be pulled into a situation that would jeopardize both of our professional paths. Her father had faith in me, and I couldn't let that faith down. Not because of a kiss. Not due to a fleeting lapse in strength. Claire rose to her feet, stepping away from me. "I ought to take my leave," she murmured softly, glancing toward the door. I observed her departure, the essence of the kiss still resonating on my lips. A part of me longed to follow her, to reassure her that everything was all right. That we might unravel this mystery. Yet, I was aware of the truth. I couldn't. As she turned and walked away, a tight knot formed in my stomach. This had transcended our personal concerns. The focus was on the repercussions of our choices. The repercussions of a boundary we had unknowingly breached. I found myself uncertain whether this was truly the conclusion. However, one thing remained clear. What we had, in whatever form, was altered for all time. A few days had passed since that kiss. The burden of it lingered heavily upon my heart. Yet, I believed I had succeeded in putting it behind me, in progressing onward. Claire and I had maintained our separation. Invisible lines etched in silence between us. We are both striving to maintain our professional demeanor. Yet, beneath the surface, I sensed that a change had already taken place. Retracing steps was not an option. On that particular day, I lingered at the office, wrapping up some paperwork. I hadn't been expecting anything out of the ordinary. However, I soon received a call from John. "Lucas, please come to my office immediately." His voice carried a cutting edge. Prompt. It sent a chill down my spine. I didn't know what this was about. Yet, I was aware that it couldn't possibly be favorable. I had spent enough time in this place to discern the unmistakable tone of someone who had already reached a conclusion. I walked down the hallway. My pace has diminished. The tension in my gut intensifies with every fleeting moment. The door to John's office was slightly ajar. I rapped gently on the door before stepping inside, and he gestured for me to enter. He sat at his desk, a familiar seriousness etched across his features. Claire sat opposite him, her gaze averted. A wave of panic surged through me. There was an unsettling feeling in the air. Something beyond the typical workplace chatter. "Lucas," John started, his tone steady yet frigid. "Please take a seat." I certainly did. My heart pounding in my chest. Claire averted her gaze from me. And that told me everything I needed to know. "John, I'm at a loss about what's happening." Yet he lifted a hand to hush me. "I'm fully aware of the situation, Lucas. I believe you feel the same way." I stood still. The understanding struck me suddenly. This wasn't about the job. This wasn't related to how I performed. This was a reflection on the events that transpired between Claire and me. It was about everything that had gone wrong in the last few weeks. "I've been picking up on some whispers," John continued, his gaze sharpening. "Whispers. And I don't need to hear about any more of them. Claire and you. I believed in your trustworthiness." I glanced at Claire, yet she avoided my eyes. Her face was ashen, a blend of remorse and sorrow etched across her features. "John, there was no occurrence." I began to speak, but he interrupted me with a quick motion. "Be honest with me, Lucas. I've received feedback, and I've observed the dynamics between the two of you. It's evident that there have been some developments." I refused to accept that. I felt a lump form in my throat. Our aim was simply to maintain a level of professionalism. It's as simple as that. "Is that all there is to it?" John reiterated, his voice escalating. "You kissed my daughter. Do you really believe I would overlook that?" The words struck me with the force of a sudden blow. I had endeavored to shield her, to maintain some semblance of order, but now it was beyond my grasp. John had already made up his mind. "Apologies, John," I uttered, my voice trembling. "This was never my intention. It was an error, and I assure you it won't occur again." Yet he appeared oblivious to my words. He was already standing, his anger palpable in the room. "An error? Forgetting a meeting is a blunder, Lucas. Your actions are a deep betrayal. You have overstepped your boundaries with my daughter, and as a result, my trust in you has been irrevocably damaged." I attempted to clarify once more, yet it seemed that with each word I uttered, I drifted further from any semblance of a solution. John was already done with me. "I offered you my all, Lucas," he stated, his tone quiet yet ominously earnest. "I placed my faith in you regarding my business and my loved ones. You have turned your back on me. You've been guiding Claire, and now, you've overstepped your bounds. I won't tolerate anyone who can't honor my boundaries." I found myself at a loss for words. I felt like the floor was slipping out from under me. This wasn't just about the kiss anymore. It was about everything I had worked for, all the hours, the effort, the trust one had built up over the years. And now it had vanished, just like that. John's expression turned steely, and I sensed the impending confrontation. "I'm letting you go, Lucas," he said, the words slicing through the stillness with sharp precision. "In effect right away. You are no longer associated with this organization." The certainty in his tone allowed for no debate. The heaviness of it bore down upon me. Escape was impossible. "John," I implored, my voice tinged with desperation. "I have put in a great deal of effort for you. For this company, I'll fix it. I will set things straight." Yet his gaze remained steadfast. "The moment has passed for that. You're done here." I remained motionless, the weight of the words settling deep within me. It was as if I were trapped in a surreal vision, a haunting experience from which there was no escape. All that I had labored for, all that I had constructed, was disintegrating right in front of my eyes. I had lost it all. And the most devastating aspect was that it wasn't merely my career that had come to an end. It was my connection with Claire, the trust we had cultivated, and the bond one envisioned we could create. I faced the door, sensing the heavy presence of inevitability surrounding me. As I approached the threshold, I glanced back one final time at Claire. Her eyes brimmed with tears, yet she remained silent. She was under no obligation to. The truth was evident to us both. With that, I stepped out of the office, the door shutting behind me for the last time.